In the US, if I wanted to work with 3 models, I'd have to invite 10 to a photo session. In Ukraine, if I invited 10 models, 9 would show up.
Привit and welcome to another episode of the Vodka Vodkast with me, Connor Klein. And today I have a special guest. He's appeared on my channel before, back in 2020 in a vlog here from Odesa, Mama. And unfortunately with the Russo-Ukrainian war, he's had to spend, or elected to spend, a lot of time outside the country, but he is contributing to Ukraine from outside. So I think it'll be an interesting conversation we're going to have about Odesa pre-2022, how you can help Ukraine from outside, how you can stay involved, how you can support the country and its people, and what we think the future of Ukraine and in particular Odesa is going to look like post-conflict, or if we ever get to that post-conflict situation. So, Ben Cook, welcome back to the channel.
Hello, thank you. And I'm also famous for a couple of B-rolls as well on your channel.
Exactly. You have popped up on different occasions,
That's right.
But most memorably was back in the summer of 2020 when we had the COVID lockdowns. You will have your own YouTube channel. I know you're not so active on that lifestyle part anymore.
No.
And you actually invited me along with Adriana and Alina, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And yeah, they cooked me up kind of a hangover Sunday brunch. It's actually a Sunday when I'm recording this, but I am not as hungover today, actually. I elected not to drink so hard yesterday. But yeah, they were great memories. I actually looked back at the vlog yesterday. So yeah, it's obviously a very different setup now being in Odesa compared to 2020. Actually, that was really 2019 was the last time we had a normal summer here, because then we had the COVID mayhem, basically the travel mayhem and lockdowns. And even though that didn't affect Ukraine so much, we really didn't have that many inconveniences, definitely compared to the North America or Western Europe, or I think most of the world. It was one of the best places to actually hang out during the COVID. Obviously since 2022 and the extended invasion by Moscow of Ukraine, we've had a very different situation. So maybe we just start back at the beginning about what attracted you to come to Ukraine, how come you came here for the first time, like what were your impressions before and after you made your first visits, and why you continued to come back, because you've been coming for a long time from what I can see.
I first came to Odesa as a photographer. So I came to Ukraine to work. And my first trip to Odesa was supposed to be 2 nights, 3 days. And Polish Airlines screwed that up. So it was 1 night, 2 days. So I was only in Odesa for a couple of days and was immediately hooked. By the time I got home, I already had plans to return.
Okay, so it definitely left a massive impression. My first trip, I actually spent about 3 weeks here, and that was definitely very profound, and I really wanted to come back and spend so much time afterwards. What happened in such a short space of time that convinced you that you wanted to come back and spend more time in Odesa?
It was the people. I barely left the apartment because I got a big apartment to shoot in. So because I was late, we had to condense all the shoots as quickly as possible. After 36 hours of flying, I was shooting within 3 hours of arriving in Odesa without any sleep. But it was the people. My makeup artist, who ended up being one of my best friends in the world, she, told me about Odesa. We went out to eat twice. And then the models I worked with, and dealing with them online as well, it was just such a breath of fresh air to work with people who wanted to work. I think I may have told you before, so in the US, if I wanted to work with 3 models, I'd have to invite 10 to a photo session. In Ukraine, if I invited 10 models, 9 would show up.
So there you go, that's the difference, right? They're just more hungry to work and more ambitious, I guess, for that kind of work than in the US, where obviously because of the difference in the socioeconomic status between the two countries, obviously they got a lot of other stuff going on, a lot of other things that would distract them, or maybe also the culture is a little bit more about ghosting in general. But we're talking about maybe about 10 years ago at least, right?
Almost 15 years ago now.
Okay, so we're talking back around 2010 in that case, because I know that you've been here before even the Euromaidan revolution. And what things after that first trip, you came back presumably for do more photography work, and other than the modeling industry and fashion industry, I guess, for shooting, what else attracted you about the culture of Ukraine and this city in particular?
Back in those days, it was the culture, the general culture of the city as a port city. So I've lived in Charleston, South Carolina as well, and I've found that even Dublin, all port cities have a little more laid back view of the world because it's such a diverse place to live. There's so many cultures in port cities because they have to be. It's the business. You know, you're in the business of strangers coming in and out of your town. And Odessa was very much that way. It had that port city vibe of people getting along, people moving slower, which being from the South, I like people who move a little bit slower. It may drive people crazy from bigger cities, but I like that.
Yeah, I can see that, definitely here. I also grew up close to a port city, so I understand where you're coming from.
So it was just the general vibe, and it did not hurt that the dollar went so far back then. I think you were here before Euromaidan as well, correct?
Yeah, the dollar went further. The euro, in my case, went further. I think it goes further now than it did back then because there was a period, maybe, before 2014. I mean, the currency was about 1 to 10, the hryvnia to the euro, so the dollar was probably around the same, give or take, a few percent. And there have been a few years previously, it had been 1 to 4, the dollar to the hryvnia. So things were actually quite expensive here. When I first started to come, which would have been around this 2009, so I think already it had gone down to around 1 to 10 at that point, and then the central bank kept it at that exchange rate more or less, shadowing that kind of band with the euro and the dollar. It was already quite affordable, I would say, but it was not super cheap because it was not pennies on the pound or cents on the dollar. I think that only happened post Euromaidan when Russia started to invade, and obviously this dramatic effect the state of the economy in Ukraine, right? So it was definitely good value, but I wouldn't have said it was like crazy value. I think that came probably in that period from about 2014 up to 2022. I wanted to ask you, how did you go about creating your own network here outside of photography? I mean, maybe that was the way that you set up your network. How did that go for you? Because I think that's something that a lot of guys say that they struggle with, especially back in those days where the level of English was definitely way less than it is now.
So yeah, I definitely lean heavily on my networking from photography. I would say 90% of my friends in Odessa are photography related. I am the godfather to models' children now. People grow up. That's 10 years ago. People grow up and have families. So I go to family dinners with people who I met, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And, that is really why I kept coming back, is the relationships that I built, that network that I built. Of course, now, because of the war, a lot of these people are scattered to the wind. Used to be, I could get on a plane. 10 hours later, I'd be in Kyiv, and I'd start my journey. You cannot get to Ukraine in 10 hours from the U.S. now. That is virtually impossible. Or at least not to your destination. You might could get to the edge.
Exactly. You might get to Chisinau in Moldova or to the border with Poland. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well because I've been coming here since 2009, and now there's even a girl I did a video with who I had a short fling with back, I don't know how many years ago it was. It's probably 10 years ago on my channel. Now I see that she's married and has shortly she'll have a family and stuff. So it's kind of the way that these things develop once you've been going for a long time. So that's kind of a sweet anecdote to drop in there. And in terms of issues you might have had creating that network, or was just being part of the photography scene enough? Like, how did you deal with, say, the linguistic barrier? Because definitely back in 2010, 2011, the level of English was quite low in Ukraine. It's a lot higher now. I wouldn't say it's the same level as Poland or Romania, never mind Sweden or the Netherlands, but it has come along a lot.
So in the very beginning, I leaned heavily on Dasha. That was my makeup artist and fixer. So she helped me do everything. But then I started learning a little Russian, and that's how I found your channel. If people have been following you forever, they remember that's how you got your start. And that opened up a lot of doors. I felt better about going out on my own. And then I started meeting expats. And so I was developing my network that way, because now I'm out on my own And the way it works is you start speaking English to somebody in a foreign country. Another person who speaks English hears you, and which is easy because nobody else is speaking this language. And all of a sudden you're networking without even knowing it. I didn't know that there were expat places in the beginning. I just went to local Ukrainian places, and then after that I found that there were expat places, and I would go there occasionally. But I'm still a locals kind of guy. I prefer a Ukrainian dive bar to a club anytime.
Okay, and how did you deal with the language barrier in those Ukrainian places in particular? Or was it just the case that you just honed in on anyone who could speak to you in English at the time? It was definitely a lot rarer back then to be a foreigner and speaking English like an American here in Odessa. I mean, later on, we'll say 2018, 2019, it was not so rare anymore.
That's right, yeah. So I guess maybe the first phrase I learned was "Два пива, пожалуйста."
There you go. So that would have worked out well in Odessa back in the day.
Back in the day. Now it's "Два пива, будь ласка."
Exactly, very good. So just explain to our viewers who don't speak Ukrainian or Russian. So he learned how to say it in Russian first, because back in the day when you started coming here, Russian was definitely the higher status language, I would even say, in Odessa. Back then it was definitely the language that was spoken by most people in daily life. Today things are dramatically different. I would describe it as bilingual here. Basically everything is written in Ukrainian, and I mean, I only basically speak in Ukrainian here these days. But you can speak in both. It's most people, it's their first language is still going to be Russian. But that's good that you've now learned the the translation into Ukrainian for that one, because it's going to go a lot further nowadays than the original. So, what are you missing about Odessa and Ukraine in particular? Because maybe you can explain also, why you've been away and what you're working on as well, and like what you miss about the city.
Okay, so I'm away for several reasons. I started a PhD program last year. It did not work out. They told me I could get it done in 3 years. I made it clear to them that I only had 3 years of savings that I would commit to this. And they said, no, you should think 5 or 6 years. Yeah, after I'm in the program, they say, they switched from 3 years to 5 or 6 years. And the other thing is my back. I had to be back here in the States for some back surgery. And just trying to put everything together to get back long term. I do want to come back short term if that's all I have available to me. I'm trying to make moves now to come back longer term. My goal has always been to live in Ukraine and visit the U.S., not live in the U.S. and visit Ukraine.
I like the way you phrased that. Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, for a lot of people who want to spend time in Ukraine, is to have just the trips back to the U.S. So, in what ways? What have you been missing?
Friends, obviously. The weather. I think late spring and late fall in Odessa is the best weather I've been in. It is. You have to bring a jacket because it'll get cool in the evenings, but it's cafe weather like I've never experienced in my life. And I've lived in Ireland as well, and it's got, except for the rain, it's got great temperatures, and the temperatures in Odessa are just absolutely perfect. Summer can get a little balmy only because it's coastal, but I miss the weather, I miss the people, I miss the food. I'm an absolute fiend for Georgian food. So, and you can't, that's something you just don't get in the U.S. There's obviously a few Georgian restaurants, but you have to be in a major city to find a Georgian restaurant. So I miss the food, I miss the people, and I miss, sitting at 12 croissants and having coffee with friends. I miss that dearly.
That's a good point you bring up about Georgian cuisine. It is also one of my favorites. For people who maybe aren't familiar, there's a lot of Georgian restaurants, we'll say in this part of Europe, even now in Poland, there's like a lot, because a lot of Georgians have been emigrating to parts of Central Europe as well, but here they were in Ukraine, obviously a lot earlier, and they have just a fantastic cuisine on top of, I also love Ukrainian cuisine. It's quite distinct from Georgian, but at the same time, both are super, super tasty. How have you been trying to stay involved in what goes on the ground here in Ukraine?
So I have a consultancy where I do open source intel research. I write a blog on that, research as well for Substack. I'm published a couple of places. So I do that. That research is mostly based off a couple of things, the war itself and how it relates to the U.S. defense, and also AI and how it's being employed in Ukraine, and just generally counter UAS, counter drone stuff. So that's the professional side. I also am co-founder of a charity that works in southern Ukraine. I have very few duties with that other than raising the occasional dollar or two. My buddy Mike, who co-founded with me, he never left Odesa when the war started. So he runs that, and we've gone from a tiny, scrappy little charity that wasn't sure what we wanted to do to a very well-respected and necessary part of southern Ukraine's healthcare system. And right now we are expanding into helping the underserved communities that are disabled. You know, Ukraine got a lot of inheritances from the Soviet Union, and unfortunately, one of those is their poor planning for disabled people. And that's changing. Ukraine is not, Russia, Ukraine is not post-Soviet at all anymore. But the buildings that were built for handicapped people, for disabled people, you've seen the ramps at the subway stations. Would you want to take your disabled friend up and down that ramp? No, it's dangerous. So we work with disabled people. Mostly right now we're working with deaf. Ukraine has its own fully formed sign language, and so we're working with that right now as well.
So you're able to still make a significant contribution even though you're over in the States and haven't been able to spend as much time as you want here in Odesa. It's funny that you mentioned Mike because, I bumped into him at a party pretty recently. It was up on an amazing rooftop, because you saw it also on my Instagram, with a view onto the Opera House and stuff.
Yeah, I saw the same views. I was like, y'all had to have been in the same place.
What do you think that the Ukrainian diaspora or Americans who want to help Ukrainians can do, to help the situation? In short, what do you think? How do you think they could contribute?
I think number one is to be educated on what's going on. It's hard to do. That's easy to say and hard to do. People's attention is fought over now. That's the entire world economy is based on our attention. But if you want to contribute, you have to understand what's going on. And you're not going to understand what's going on by going to people who monetize the information they're giving to you. They're going to be doing audience capture, which means they're going to figure out which group of people will pay them the most money. And their message is going to be tailored to that. And the people who are going to be giving them the most money right now are the ones who like to, excuse my language, who like to stir shit and cause problems. So you have to be informed, number one, here in the U.S., and number two, you need to reach out to your congressman, all your representatives, and let them know where you fall on the situation. There's a lot of misinformation all over the world about Ukraine. Russia doesn't do a lot well, but it does propaganda extremely well. So inform yourself and then reach out to people who are decision makers. If you want to contribute directly, there's some great charities out there. I'm sure they can contact you or I about who those charities are and people that we trust to make sure the money actually gets to where it's supposed to.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you bring up about countering, or at least finding a way to get out of the Russian propaganda, because it's quite nefarious and omnipresent in a lot of ways. Especially in the US, they focused, from their point of view, quite correctly on trying to change the opinion of the war in North America and Western Europe, because Ukraine, to a certain extent, has depended on aid from those countries. And we have democracies, unlike Russia, which is just a dictatorship where there's complete control, or at this point, almost complete control. They're now creating a completely new system where they're going to, all these things like what we're using right now to speak, which is telling you everything is going to be banned. They're going to have their own version, so they can eavesdrop on everything at all times and get controlled. So we can't really do much to influence how Russians think in terms of the information space. They're just not going to see what we have to offer. Even YouTube now is pretty slow, and it will probably be phased out any access to it, even VPNs pretty soon. But we have pretty open societies, not 100%, but pretty open societies, and they exploit that to try to sow division and paint themselves as some sort of victim, when quite clearly they are aggressive, revanchist empire trying to take back control of a former part of their empire that doesn't want to have anything to do with them quite rightly, because, well, look at the quality of life there compared to, say, a country like Poland, which had, made a beeline for being part of the European Union and obviously having better ties with the US in the early 90s, and their GDP per capita and the quality of life in Poland versus Russia, especially as a whole, even compared to Moscow. I mean, Poland is, at this stage, has a higher quality of life. So that's quite a good point for people to remember, that you need to know who to trust. I think this point you bring up about audience capture, there are a lot of YouTubers who I just see as cheerleaders. They're cheerleaders for a particular point of view, and they're just going to tell that audience what they want to hear, no matter what the reality is on the ground. And in the beginning, I used to respond a lot to these pro-Russian propagandas. But at a certain point, it's like, well, if people are still listening to what they got to say, when demonstrably over 3 months, 6 months, a year, and now 3.5 years, they're wrong all the time, then those people are not watching it to actually get any accurate information about the war. They're getting it because they like to hear that Russia's going to win, no matter what happens on the ground here. And there is, to a certain extent, the same thing on the pro-Ukrainian side as well. There are certain major YouTubers who even, I'm not going to say that they're bad because they help raise money for the defense of the country, but I don't watch them personally because I need to know what's going on here. I mean, I have rocket attacks all the time, so I only focus on a few different content creators who, in general, are pretty accurate. So I think that's important for people. What tips would you give people to be able to recognize what's a good content creator here on YouTube to listen to?
If they tell you what you want to hear, if you watch an hour of them talking, and there's nothing that they say that you don't disagree with, that's a sign that someone's playing to you. It is possible to watch a video and agree with everything, so that's not perfect. But if you watch 3 or 4 videos and you're just constantly shaking your head, yeah, this guy preached, brother. Yeah, this is it exactly. That's not the truth. I mean, I've watched you for years now, and you tell a city like it is, warts and all. I mean, there's some cities you just say that's a kind of a no-go. You could probably have opportunities with cities and countries wanting to capture you to only give the good side of certain things, or clubs and restaurants to capture you to only give the good side of certain things. There are YouTubers who do that all the time.
I just wanted to interject because there are so many of these lifestyle YouTubers now in Russia that are from the West originally. They won't even criticize the weather in winter in Russia. I mean, there's nothing ever. Who would think in a collapsing empire where there's huge income disparity, where the quality of life sucks objectively, except for a few minor exceptions, that everything is always perfect. It's like the Truman Show. Isn't that like Truman wakes up and every day it's perfect, right? So, but their audiences are growing and growing and growing, because that's what people, they want to be part of I Love Russia Club, I guess, and they're just going to watch that. But it bears very little resemblance with reality. If someone is not telling you the major disadvantages of moving to any country, then they're not credible. So, but this is, the era that we live in, unfortunately. So it is what it is. And if you are someone who just only sees positive about one country, you should be smart enough to think, hold on a sec, they've never said anything in 10 videos that's negative about living in a country where you can't even bloody use YouTube, the even platform that they are sending it to you freely. They've never mentioned that. They have to illegally upload their video, for goodness sake. It always knocks me out. Anyways, maybe I'll have to react to some of those propaganda at some point, in the sense of explaining, the differences and who you should trust. It's probably a pretty good point. Moving on, what do you see as the future of Ukraine, and why should people be interested, maybe even to come now? I mean, you're unfortunately not in a position where you can spend as much time as you want at the moment, but your friend Mike is here the entire time during the war, from what I can see. So maybe you can explain what would be the interest in coming to Ukraine at the moment, and how you see things going forward.
So I still think Ukraine and Odessa culturally are superior to so many other places, especially Odessa. If you are looking for if you're a history buff, if you're a humanitarian, if you're wanting to do the scouting work for investing in a place that post-war is going to explode, that would be why you want to come now, because it's absolutely amazing. And I mean, obviously, dating is kind of tough during the war. Like you've said before, you don't want to come to Ukraine to date. I don't know that that's the legitimate reason to subject yourself to the war, because Russia tomorrow could go back to bombing infrastructure, and then if you're very Western and not very calloused, that may not be a good time for you, with no electricity and no internet. So, but if you're there with your eyes wide open, yeah, I don't see any reason why, with planning and foresight, you could not go to Odessa now. I think I've equated it to people. It's like, if you went to the wrong place in South Chicago or the wrong places in Paris, France, you're probably going to be okay. There's a really good chance that nothing's going to go wrong. It's not going to matter, but there is still that chance. You're not in your exact same place that you travel and are comfortable all the time.
Yeah, here the issue, from what I can see, having the experience of actually being here at the moment and spent about half the, say, post-2022 period, right? So half the war, in inverted commas, is, that's affected Odessa. Actually, here, it's more the psychological impact of being here with air alerts and potentially seeing something blowing up. It's not actually the statistical chance of being injured or killed by Russian rockets or drone attacks. As long as you're in a city far from the front, like here in Odessa, then it's 1 in a million on any given day per capita that something like that is going to happen. And if you compare going to the wrong area in Paris or in any major city, whether it's in the US in particular, I guess, it's way higher. It's way higher. It's like going to be minimum 20 times higher, right? Here you don't have to worry about violent crime. I've heard from one friend that there was an attempted mugging, not even a violent crime necessarily, someone tried to pickpocket him. But that was like 2 years ago, I think. Since 2022, there aren't really any scams anymore. I mean, that's not violent crime normally, although sometimes I guess it becomes violent. So really the other dangers that you might have traveling, they don't apply here because of martial law, and kind of, the country is more or less on lockdown in that sense that, I think I read 95% of violent crime is solved, even if it happens nowadays, because there's so little of it, and they just put the resources into solving it to make sure that they don't have recidivism, right? That people go around committing crime. So even though you have obviously that increased risk of Russian terrorist attack, at the end of the day, it's pretty low per day that you would actually experience that. So I think for guys who want to come here, my message has been more that, as you pointed out, that if you're coming here with a perspective, either because you're really interested in what's going on, you want to inform yourself, and or you're looking at post-conflict and the opportunities that are going to be here in Ukraine, now you want to get ahead of the pack, then these are great reasons. If you're also a single guy, like was the main reason, I guess, why most guys watched my channel before 2022, it was relocation, but most of them are single, then I think you need to have some additional reason to actually come here. Otherwise, I think it's a bit ridiculous to come. What, you're going to deal with a rocket attack because you want to date girls? That's a pretty superficial reason to be here. It's not really well thought out. I mean, if you want to meet Ukrainian girls without rockets, then go to Poland, go to Warsaw. The thing is, you're going to have thousands of other guys as competition. I guess that's the main reason. Maybe to avoid Poland. We'll say Vilnius then, or somewhere in the Baltics or somewhere else. So I think that's a pretty good synopsis of why you should come here now. What do you think the future of Ukraine will be post-conflict? We don't know how it's going to end at this point. I'm going to quote Igor Girkin, the Russian ultranationalist who actually started the war, presided over the beginning of this war back in 2014 on the ground. He orchestrated and planned and executed the invasion of Crimea and parts of the Donbass. He now sits in a Russian prison because he's an opponent of Vladimir Putin, not because he's a liberal Democrat. He's a war criminal and psychopath. Well, he's an alleged war criminal. He needs to be prosecuted for that. But he does present a certain threat to Putin because, one, he's very candid and open in criticizing him, and he has the potential as a former successful leader in the military to be a rival, a little bit like Prigozhin. He says that basically Russia has very little chance of winning the war. The overwhelming likelihood is going to be that either Ukraine wins completely, like takes back everything, or there will be at certain point, a certain impasse and stalemate that will be protracted, and Russia just won't be able to win. Basically going to run out of resources and potential. So we're going to work with that scenario, which is the Girkin scenario, because it's someone who's not on our side, who is has a good track record of analyzing, predicting, is knowledgeable. What do you see in that context, Ukraine's future? What do you think is going to happen, lifestyle and economics, just in general, as a place to live in the future?
You and I remember Ukraine before, 2019, before COVID. And it was as diverse a city as I have ever been in. The streets were packed, commerce was booming, things were growing left and right. I mean, the state bird or the oblast bird is the crane, and I don't mean the bird, I mean the construction crane. Odessa was growing too fast, honestly. It was growing too fast. And COVID slowed that down, and then the war really slowed it. The exception to that is, war commerce, obviously. But that's going to come rushing back and then some. If you want to buy real estate now, you could buy an apartment in city center Odessa for pennies on what it was going to be if COVID hadn't happened and then the war.
I agree entirely.
So that if you are going to speculate on real estate, my God, Odessa is a great place. And people know that. So there are cheaper places to speculate on real estate in Ukraine. Kyiv, Odessa, and Lviv are not your lowest hanging fruit. But in terms of lifestyle and enjoyment, Odessa wins that. I disagree with the pundits on how many people are going to come back. I think most of the women will come back. We'll put it this way: if their mother still lives in Ukraine, 80% of those women will come back. If their mother still lives in Ukraine, if their mother traveled with them, 80% of them will stay and not come back. But if mom's still here, the bond between a Ukrainian woman and her mother is pretty doggone strong. The other thing is Ukrainian people don't like the healthcare outside of Ukraine, believe it or not. I don't like the healthcare in Ukraine. Ukrainians don't like it outside of Ukraine. So, especially if they're giving birth and have small children. The healthcare for small children in Ukraine is actually quite good. So I think we're going to have a lot of people coming back to Ukraine. I'd be interested to hear your take on what you think Ukraine might do with the males that got out in the beginning legally. There was about a day to a day and a half where a lot of males got stamped out legally.
Yeah, the law was signed by Zelensky on, I'm not sure what time of the day it was signed, on day 2 of the extended invasion. So it was not on the 24th, but on the 25th of February 2022. So those men left legally, and there were obviously a lot of Ukrainian men who were already abroad. They're not obliged to actually come back, right? So I don't think there's anything they can say to the guys who legally left. I mean, they didn't break any laws, so I don't see why that's a big issue. I think it's an issue with the guys who illegally left afterwards, because there were some guys who just illegally crossed the border and left. Some tragically have died trying to leave as well. There's a documented case of that where they weren't able to swim and they misjudged the current in a river, maybe between Romania and Ukraine. I think those guys, there's going to be probably some legal issue. I'm not sure what they'll have as a remedy. Are they going to give them all amnesty to try and encourage them to come back? Because not much, I guess they will need to get their documents renewed. I think that's been a bit of a discussion, like if they want to get new passports, but the illegal left the country, is there going to be some consequence for that? Like, will they not issue them a new passport unless they come back to Ukraine? Or will they fine them? I'm not really sure what they're going to do about that. I think also if there is a period, say this might happen, or maybe they'll have thought about this. Like, what happens if they end martial law and they say, okay, all men can leave, and we still have this temporary protection directive, which means all the Ukrainian guys can live and work, and they all register before they change that law in the EU, then are we going to see millions of men leave? They just changed the law here, so now men between 18 to 23 can leave. Not sure how it works, if they have to get pre-authorization or it's just automatic. I didn't look enough in that new law. It's pretty new. Originally, it was 18 to 60, the one that was signed on the 25th February 2022. They cannot leave without justification. You can get a justification to leave, and there was a lot of rules about that. There was a good bit of corruption at the beginning. I just know personally that there were people who bribed money to get those documents. Well, they got the documents, so that's again another bit of a gray area. Are they going to be able to track, who illegitimately got those documents or not? I just think that there's a lot of moving parts. I'm not as optimistic as you about that many more Ukrainian women coming back, regardless of where their mother lives, because I've actually met, especially in the last, this summer, so I went to Lviv, I think it was back in May already, maybe it was even April, and I've obviously been here in Odessa on and off throughout the summer. We're now in like late September. And I have met so many women who spent 3 years in either European Union, some in Bali, some in other parts of the world. And they are back in Ukraine for good. And these are women early to mid 20s, single. I mean, I'm more likely to meet them if they're single because they're out socializing. That's the way these things work. And I'm surprised I didn't meet girls like that in 2022, 2023, and I don't even think in 2024 I met them. So definitely there are more already coming back. They decided that living in Western Europe was not for them. They've come back. So will many more come back, especially if this war goes on for over 5 years? Eventually they might meet someone, whether they're Ukrainian or a foreigner, where they're living, settled down, have a family. I mean, if they marry a foreigner, are they going to be able to encourage them to come to Ukraine? Maybe, maybe not. And I think maybe the ones that have a career, they're working somewhere for 5 years, are they going to give that up if they had to struggle to achieve something in 5 years just to come back to Ukraine because, the fighting stopped? I think people are making the decision now a lot on whether they want to come back or not. And interesting, when I was in Ireland, Angela took English classes that were, given by the state for Ukrainians who came. So she met a lot of Ukrainian women. And because in 2022, I mean, obviously men couldn't leave in general, women and children could, and old people. And most of them left and went back to Ukraine. The majority, not all, but the majority of the women she met in 2020, they actually didn't want to live in Ireland, even though Ireland has a super economy. Some stayed and they got jobs, but there were particular reasons why they stayed. And they even said they would prefer to live in Ukraine, but with this situation now they have a job. So I think it's a bit ambiguous. We can't really predict. There's just a lot of different factors that might come in. So I'm glad that you're optimistic about that. I think now they've actually already come back. So maybe I'm putting it in a more optimistic slant. I think they've already started to come back, the women you're talking about. So they're not even waiting for the end of the conflict. So yeah, I think that's definitely something that we can look forward to in terms of just repopulating Ukraine, and obviously then, as you point out, with the economy, definitely real estate prices, that is something also that guys can reach out to me and discuss. What do you see as the main economic sectors that are going to do well post-conflict for Ukraine?
Well, I mean, obviously construction. Reconstruction is going to be huge. The Ukraine doesn't have the resources to bring to bear to do all the reconstruction that needs to be done. They're going to have to bring people in for that, honestly. And there's a particular way that that's going to have to go. You're going to have to get the EOD guys, the sappers in there, as they call them, to clear it. Then you're going to have to demolish it. Then you're going to have to reconstruct it. Unfortunately, we tell you the good and the bad here. That's going to be ripe for corruption. And Ukraine has to be very careful in how they solve that immigration problem. Because, like I said, there's just not going to be enough people in Ukraine. Even if everybody who could work went to work, it's not going to be enough people for that. And so I'm very interested to see how Ukraine will do that. Obviously, they're going to have a program where the best jobs go to those who fought. I feel sure that will be the case. And it should. I don't disagree with that. But there's going to be a lot of construction-related jobs. And I don't just mean like you're the guy hauling the concrete. I mean, you're the dude who does the human resources for the guy who hauls the concrete, Odesa and other places will see a boom in people coming for recreation. You and I both remember that, when COVID hit, Odesa found a way.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really shut down at all.
A lot of places, I would go to Kiev and I would go to Odesa, and it was night and day in how the city was run. But, Odesa will keep its tourism up and running, and it will grow significantly. I'm not necessarily looking forward to wall-to-wall people again in Odesa. I like my Odesa where it's just me able to do anything I want when I want. But I'm a selfish SOB.
Well, that is the uniqueness about coming right now. There's no international tourism. There's a lot of Ukrainian tourism, especially in late June, early July. That's when Ukrainians take their holidays, and Ukrainians who decide to stay here, especially men, or someone who's in a couple and the guy can't leave. This is the one city with the seaside, big city with seaside, that is safe to go to in Ukraine. Well, it's not safe probably to go to Crimea anyways, on the other side, on the occupied side, with the amount of munitions that are fired back and forth. So it's really a special time to come. And there's just I guess we also had it at the beginning of COVID. There was no, and also in 2014, there were no foreigners here, basically. The hordes of foreign horny guys that I always call out on my channel, they are nowhere to be seen, obviously, at this time. And yeah, it's kind of unique. I mean, there are pluses and minuses. Obviously, we got Russia trying to wreck the place from afar, bitter that they will almost certainly never ever take this city or even get close to it. And on the other hand, yeah, things are dramatically cheaper than everywhere else in Europe, and there are no real annoying, tourists, especially the male kind of pickup artist types who are running around chasing the girls, no matter what their nationality or ethnicity is. So, yeah, and there's almost no crime, no petty crime. It's really remarkably safe for most of the time that you're here. So, yeah, I would say to guys that if you want to see that part of the Ukraine experience, you need to come now and not do what 99% of guys are going to do. They're going to tell me, oh, I'll come after the conflict. Well, you and about 100,000 other guys are thinking the same way, but it's that 1% that says, screw it, I'm going to come now, that are actually going to, reap the rewards of that special experience.
Yeah, if you build your network now, that network will be stronger than the network you can build if you wait.
Well, I think at that point you'll be relying on guys like me and you to tap you into the network, basically, because now is the time to build those good connections. There's a very tight business community here, especially foreigners. I go to parties normally about once a week where I meet both local and foreign businessmen. So yeah, it's definitely a very strong esprit de corps, I would say, because we're hearing the same experience as well. So everybody's looking forward to a real boom. I mean, the boom at the moment is in the defense industry, but of course there's also a lot of guys already investing in real estate with the expectation that after the war everything is going to be transformed. And yeah, if I look at the price difference, cost of living here between being in Poland, where I go to Warsaw quite often, we've even met up in Warsaw. Yeah, it's probably half the price here at this point, in Odessa versus Warsaw. So there are pluses and minuses. As a final departing statement, we may do another vodcast. Unfortunately, I'd like to be able to toast and obviously drink the shot of vodka with you, but at the moment, since you're far away, we'll have to take a rain check on that. What parting message would you like to give to viewers about Ukraine and Odessa and the experience of coming here? Either it's going to be now or sometime in the future.
If you've thought about going to Odessa and for whatever reason haven't done it yet, I would be comfortable saying that if you spend the time to figure out the best way to go, contact or contact me even, we can tell you how to get in there. It's not as difficult as it sounds to get to Odessa. It's not difficult at all, actually. It's interesting. If you've never been on an old post-Soviet train, you owe that to yourself to do it at least once. Unfortunately, they're modernizing them so fast that I don't even get the enjoyment of being on those old post-Soviet trains that I enjoy so much. But anyway, you should come. If you're thinking about retirement in Europe and you don't want to blow it all on the seaside apartment that you would get anywhere else in Europe, you could still afford one here in Odessa. North of Odessa proper, there's good real estate. South of Odessa proper, there's unbelievable real estate. And you won't be disappointed with the people. I cannot imagine that would ever be the case. So I don't want to say if you're looking to get into Europe on the cheap. That's not what I want to say. But value for money, Ukraine is the last coastal place where you can get value for money in all of Europe. So if you're interested in that at all, I would come now because, like we say, the competition as soon as the war is over is going to be immense, and you're going to lose all that value for your money.
Yeah, 100%. I endorse that message because the early bird catches the worm, to use an old adage in English. Now is the time to come if you're looking for those opportunities because, as I already said, 99% of guys all think the same. So you can come and invest in it now, and if you decide to resell it, you'll probably make a killing. If you decide to keep it, well, you'll have gotten it probably for a fraction of the cost that it's going to be in the future, because the prices have not moved since 2021. There was a discount in 2022, late 2022, for a lot of property, but since then, because of the population movements within Ukraine, they're kind of the same price level, but everywhere else in the world has been going up for the last 3.5 years. And yeah, compared to what it will be worth post-conflict in the long term, I think it's kind of like a no-brainer if that's the way you're thinking. So thanks for pointing that out and re-emphasizing that, Ben. I'm going to have to leave it at that. I will drop the links to the charity and all that good stuff in your contacts down below, and any other social media that you want me to highlight. I'll put all that good stuff down below in the description. And hopefully, man, we're going to meet up in person. I know the last time was Warsaw. Also, Adriana was there as well. on that particular meetup. She was in the original video that we shot in the vlog in 2020. So yeah, stay strong, keep supporting Ukraine, and hope to see you back in Odessa, Mama, for those Odessa vibes very, very soon. And Slava Ukraini. So, do побачення and chat soon, Ben.
Thanks, Connor. Do побачення.